One, I just kind of want to emphasize that this is really a discovery process, right? We're finding out what are the variables that offer the conditions for us to feel more settled and more connected to what's happening. There is a mind-body connection. And sometimes being able to stand and being given permission to move allows the organism on its own to be able to discharge any accumulated tension or anxiety that we've picked up throughout the day. It's not normal for us as animals to have a sedentary life. Usually, if we were to let it, the body will make adjustments. And this might have been clear to you when you closed your eyes and you were in standing. Did anyone notice all the micro adjustments that the body makes for balance? Did you notice that happening, right? Continuously? Which is a beautiful thing to start to connect with, that there is this intelligence of the organism that is continuously monitoring the conditions, internal and external. And so standing meditation could be a way that might be helpful to maintain our embodiment and also alertness, because there is a certain level of energy or alertness that needs to be there for you to not just fall over. And one of the things that I hear often in sitting meditation is that people feel sleepy or they end up drifting off. And that will most likely not happen when you're standing. So it can be an interesting posture to experiment with. So going back to the question of standing still or moving, which one is okay? And that really has to do with each individual person, the context of the conditions that you're in right now, and what's going to offer more soothing. And so this is an experiment, and why I encourage to not follow my guidance. Because my guidance is a suggestion that works for me, but might not work for all people. We're experimenting. In the beginning, movement actually might be of benefit. The rocking is a soothing motion. Movement is a physical way to discharge accumulated tension or stress. So it's okay to let the body move. Now, there's a difference between compulsive behavior or a natural following. Compulsive behavior comes from an unease internally with what's happening. So we try a different strategy to see if we get relief from it. And that the strategy or the movement into a behavioral pattern is unconscious. We don't notice it. When we are in presence, when we are conscious or aware of the discomfort, there becomes a choice as to whether it is skillful to actually move, to adjust, to offer relief, to offer soothing and well-being, or to recognize that there's a lot of restlessness there. And if I adjust and move, well, that restlessness is not going to go away. I'm going to want to compulsively adjust and move. And the whole time I'm just moving and adjusting. The discernment between that is the energy behind the motivation for the movement. And then finally, with stillness, there comes a time where the stillness or not movement becomes natural. It's not a restrictive quality. I'm not forcing myself to stay in a posture that is uncomfortable. There's just a natural melting into the body and sinking with the gravity and feeling the soothingness of the sensation of pressure and weight that in itself quiets the mind. It simplifies. And there's something nourishing in that. So this might be another metric to use or reference point is what is the most nourishing for you in this moment? Can you offer yourself that? If you don't know, can you create the space for the body to choose that without jerking it out of it and forcing something else? Remember when we were talking about mindfulness and we were talking about there's two aspects that we look at and both are equally important. We said that there's an attentional quality or stability, meaning being able to choose where I place my attention, keep it there, but also the attitude mattered equally. The attitude is that of allowing. The attitude is that of just letting the experience happen. So there's something very powerful for us to untrain ourselves from following direction and discovering for ourselves what is the natural rhythm of what the organism wants. This goes against most of how we do things in our lives. Most of the time in our lives, we are pushing or forcing ourselves to experience a particular thing. What's being asked for here is to trust, is to follow. It's easier to drop into the body when you feel it moving, when you notice the weight, the pressure difference, and other sensations. So standing or even moving could be a beginner's point, or I shouldn't say beginner, but an entry point into mindfulness that is much easier than just sitting. Just for you to have an idea how undeveloped we are in terms of feeling sensations. Most of us have a limited vocabulary for even describing sensations. And so I want to put a slide up to show you a few words, because I think that being exposed to this vocabulary could help the mind start noticing the sensations and giving names to them, not to conceptualize it, but just to point the attention to how many different flavors of sensations there are out there. Let me see if I can find. The resolution is not great, but can you guys see the words on here? So that when I'm asking, what are you feeling right now in your hands? And I know there's a limitation to words in the sense that there aren't words to describe what a felt sense is. And I know there's a danger in going into the conceptual. So just let the question be there without answering it. How do your hands feel? Does the sensation stay the same? If you were to give a shape to the sensation, what would it be? Can you feel the shape in your hands? How deep is the sensation? Is it skin level? Does it go deeper? Is the sensation beyond your hand? The sensation is also maybe a quarter of an inch above and surrounding the hands. Can you feel your wrists, arms? Is the sensation the same or is it different? What about when you move your fingers? How do the sensations change from a felt sense? Does your hand feel different than when it was still? So this is a different way to develop vocabulary, not on a conceptual word basis, but as imagine like a palette of different sensations to color your experience. We develop this by feeling, not by thinking about it, by moving and sensing and bringing our attention to the nuances of sensory that arises. We all have the hardware for this. We might have not used it so much, so it's atrophied, but it's available. This can be a place of practice. So for example, my morning meditation, whereas I used to sit quietly in a room, now happens out on the deck. And the reason I do this on the deck, and I do this standing with the eyes open, is to fully drop into the sensations that light, sunlight, the breeze, smells of the flowers in the backyard, sounds of the birds, so that I am in this ocean of sensory. So that I can once again expose this organism to being sentient, to awakening, to expanding its perception beyond the mental cognitive framework in which it's mostly absorbed in. And can I bring back the vividness of what it's like to be here? I want to emphasize that this is experiential. We do this by experimenting and being curious and enjoying. This is how we learn. We drop any concept of how things are. We stop following instructions. We go back to our inner authority, the same inner unquestionable authority you had as a child, where you did things out of discovery, not out of fear of how you were going to be perceived or for being right or wrong. When we're in the state of experiential, when the senses are engaged and we are witnessing and participating at the same time, consciously, we experience a state. And there is something about the state that feels incredibly connecting. That our fullness of perception is actually congruent with what's actually happening. And this congruency, this alignment, feels like a homecoming. And it's not epic. It's not this like incredible godly moment. It's mundane. And yet that subtle flavor of connection, even if it's not intense, is deeply nourishing. And this is the biofeedback that the body gives when we are on track. This organism has a way to give us feedback, to guide us how to navigate our lives in a way that leads to well-being. If we were to listen, if we were to attune, if we were to trust, what would we discover? It's simple, but it's not easy. Because it means doing something different than what we've been doing until now. And that's scary. And so we experiment in small bites. Maybe it's a fragrance that you smell outside in the backyard, or it's a delicious bite into something you're eating, or it's the noticing of the changing light in somebody's eyes, right? It's these small moments of connection create a reference point for our attention to rest in. When you get these experiences, you don't have to do anything. You don't have to make it last. You don't have to keep your attention there. Because the moment you start trying to do something, it's lost. There's a tension when we are forcing something to happen. There's a separation when we are wanting to experience something that's not happening. It moves us away from presence. Small moments of connection and noticing and enjoying create the reference point for the organism to return there on its own. It does not require your input. The more of these connecting moments you have, the more there will be. Indirectly, we are reorienting the organism just by exposure. That's all we're doing is exposing. Exposing and noticing the impact. You know when you're connected and you know when you're disconnected. And it's impossible to be connected all the time. It's impossible to be present all the time. It's probably not healthy because otherwise we wouldn't go to sleep. The organism needs time off. One of the protective mechanisms that we have is disassociation when the stimulus is too much. So don't shame yourself in your meditation practice if you notice that you've wandered off. You don't have a choice in this. The system was overtaken and you wandered off. Your choice is when you awaken and you come back, is the attitude you have about what just happened. Is your attitude focusing on awakening? Or is it evaluating the getting lost? That's the choice we have. I know this is a little contradictory to a lot of the mindfulness teachings that are out there. That's really about focusing the attention on an object and bringing it back over and over. And that is a practice we can do. We can do that, and there's nothing wrong with that. And it is a way into developing the stability that it is needed for attention to even be with our experience consciously. But the way it's been introduced in our Western world is just another striving. So just be careful with that. That we choose somewhere to place our attention as a resting place from the onslaught of the thinking mind. It's a place for relief. It's not a goal. The moment you make that a goal, we're no longer doing mindfulness. And being able to discern that is really important. That could cost you years of practice, as I can attest to.
Or that actually takes away from the experience, right? And I think the value is more noticing, oh, I'm not really attending to what Aiko's saying, and that's okay. Mm-hmm. But just being able to notice that, I think, is really powerful. And maybe noticing that I'm feeling this urgency or this need to like think about this other thing for now, and that's okay as well. Mm-hmm. And so for me, having some of that permissiveness actually makes the experience, for me at least, it makes it, I actually feel more connected with the experience. Mm-hmm. And it's more grounding in some way than feeling mm-hmm. like I have to do it a specific way, if mm-hmm. that makes sense. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I really think that permissiveness, at least for me, is the foundation to having the state of relaxation, interest, playfulness, mm-hmm. that gives the attitude or the conditions for mindfulness to be there. And I love the mention of noticing the impact or tracking the impact. When I let myself follow where I want to go, what's the biofeedback? Is it relaxation? Is there connection? That's what we're always using as a metric, because it's natural for us to ask ourselves, am I doing this right? What am I supposed to be doing? And I know that for myself, I teach in a very loose way. So that could be, what are we doing? I like it that way because that gives the framework for you to figure out what's right or wrong. And the way you find that out, once again, could just be a simple question. Do I feel more connected in this moment or less? That's your compass. And because we're so different, everyone has their unique set of configurations, conditions. We're even different from one moment to the next. What's going to work, a technique that works in one moment, might not be helpful in another. So we don't want to become fixated on anything. We want to engage always in that experimental way. And we're just tracking the impact. If I'm having an obsessive thought, what would happen if I follow it? Oh, I just followed it. Oh, the body is tense. Oh, I'm feeling very dysregulated. Oh, I can't pull out. Or I'm following that thought that popped up and I'm feeling connected. That piece that I was trying to write that I've been struggling for days to get it right is available right now. I'm going to grab a pen and paper and I'm just going to flow it out and see what happens. And I might be surprised that something that took maybe a week or so, or would have taken a week or so for me to prepare, I just did that in 10 minutes. So is it okay to disrupt your meditation and pick up a piece of paper and start writing? Try it out. What happens? Is there connection? Or is it a temporary relief that you feel better because you wrote down your to-do list, but then you're back in that same state? We're seeing for ourselves what works, what doesn't work, what leads to more connection, what leads to disconnection. That's the path. Because I might be sitting and the body might be wanting movement, but sometimes I experiment with what happens if I were to just not move. And what I find is that it's uncomfortable for maybe a minute. And then after that, there's a deep dropping into. So I'm not saying one way is better than the other. We're experimenting. And through what we notice, what we observe from the experiment, we start to learn more about our condition. And what I have found out is one of my conditions, and I think this is a universal condition, is to avoid discomfort. If there's any uncomfortableness, I will fix it by doing something else. What happens if I actually stay with the discomfort? Is the story in my mind that this is going to last forever or this is unbearable? Is that true? So we want to experiment on both sides. We want the permissiveness to try and break form, but we also want the permissiveness to stay in form to see what the results of that is. Because otherwise we just become this hamster on a wheel, chasing always the next relief. This is an addictive pattern that we have. And whatever we're chasing constantly is not what's happening. If there's discomfort in the body, it might be wise to shift, to offer relief so that I can settle and deepen. If there's discomfort in the body, I might actually sit in the discomfort and study discomfort and study how I relate to discomfort. And what I might discover is that my belief around it actually does not match up what is true. So I think I will leave you with that and say, have fun playing. This is what this is about. This is your life. Your life is a playground. Your body is an old friend worthwhile reconnecting with, because your body has been with you since the beginning and knows you more than anybody else. Take some time to get to know it, to be able to understand how it communicates, and to form a strong alliance with it. Because your body not only has the ability to accurately tell you what's happening, but it has the ability to bring you in deeper connection with your life experiences.